Hey now, what is up everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka ReviewKingMB, and it's Flash time! Yes, Flash Season 3, Episode 2, entitled Paradox. Now, at the beginning of this episode, we see Barry going to talk to Felicity. Now, I know how random this sounds, or seems, or looked to see him randomly go to Felicity of all people. I will say that I like this. I like the fact that Barry went to somebody for help, for advice, or just somebody to vent to that wasn't a part of his immediate group, wasn't a part of the people that we see each and every week. Him and Felicity were kind of close. They almost dated. I mean, who hasn't Felicity dated at this point? But at least there was a closeness there that I feel like we haven't seen in a while. So him going off to the other show and finding somebody to talk to was interesting. You see that, like, when he first really started to realize how different things were, what was going on, how he was at the labs, and Cisco was being very awkward with him. And, of course, Iris isn't talking to her father, Joe. And we didn't know why they weren't talking, but now we find out that it's because Joe didn't tell Iris about her mom. Now, in the original timeline, he did tell her, and everything was fine. This version, though, it didn't happen, and she was pissed at him for it. And also, we see that Cisco goes to support groups because his brother died. And this is why Cisco was awkward towards him. His brother died in a car crash, and so he's mad at Barry because he wanted Barry to go back in time to save his brother, but Barry won't do it. So you see Felicity, like, they're going through this, and then there's a moment where we see that Diggle doesn't have a baby girl anymore, Sarah. He now has a son. What? First of all, I am glad that it's like it didn't just affect our Flash show. It didn't just affect the Flash characters, because that's what it seemed like. When you watched Arrow last week, it didn't seem like any effects were felt on that show. And it's all supposed to be one universe, so that was kind of fishy. But seeing that, I guess it makes sense. I'm just upset to see baby Sarah gone. That was a little sad to see that he now has a son. Baby John now. So then he goes back, and the only other thing I guess that's different is that he now has a partner in his office. Tom Felton, a.k.a. Draco Malfoy. This was, I knew that this actor was going to be on the show, and I think his character is interesting. There's obviously going to be more going on here. They already don't like each other. He already doesn't trust Barry. Now, there's an actual pretty funny moment, entertaining moment, where Barry tries to get everybody together for dinner because he wants to try to reconcile the differences. He wants them to be a team again. And the scene where he goes to talk to Joe and he's trying to convince him about Iris meeting up, and then he speeds over to Iris and does the same thing, and he's going back and forth, bouncing back in between conversation to make it work and to see what each other want for dinner and where to meet. That was very funny. It's a little unbelievable that, like, wait, none of them noticed him speeding away and then coming back in between seconds of him not being there. Oh, nitpicking, I know. It was worth it, though, for the moment. I did enjoy it. It's the first time I think they've ever done something like that. When you see at dinner, it's very awkward. But then a new speedster shows up. And I know it's the third season. It's the third time that we've had an evil speedster to combat Barry. And it's kind of not forced, but it's because the first two seasons I was okay with it. Reverse Flash is still the best villain that they've ever had. And then Zoom is pretty menacing and scary, just a great villain as well. So this one, I'm not saying I hated him. I'm not saying he was lame. Maybe a little lame. But it's the rival guy, Edward Claris, who he died in the other timeline. But then somehow, because of this guy, Alchemy, gave this person, Claris, his powers back and somehow enabled him to remember the other timeline. I don't really understand it. I don't really know. Maybe it'll all make sense once we find out more about Alchemy, or should I say Dr. Alchemy. So Barry has to go head-to-head with him, and he finally decides, look, I'm just going to go back in time again. This is like the third or fourth or fifth time that he's going to do it. I thought we were going to see the whole mother getting killed again scene. That would have been kind of funny, although it shouldn't be. He goes back and gets grabbed by another speedster, Henry Allen, or I guess the doppelganger of his father, John Wesley Shipp. That version of the Flash from 1998. This was interesting. I almost wish we spent more time in 1998 because it's only one scene, a good scene of him giving Barry advice, and I loved the advice. I did. Just the fact of him saying, look, you've been messing with the timeline, and every time you do it, it's like the butterfly effect, the Ashton Kutcher movie, where you can't fix things. Everything's going to bleed into one another, and it's going to create all these ripple effects. Just the whole point of being a superhero is that if you make a mistake, you have to deal with it. You have to learn from it. You have to grow from it. If you just keep going back in time to undo it, then you're not really growing. You're not moving forward. I love that. It's a great speech to give to a young superhero. So I thought that was great. When he goes back to his timeline, he finally sits everybody down and tells them the truth. And if I had a dime for every time we talked about the timeline and changing the timeline, and somebody said, what? And then he had to get out that clear board and draw the map of, this is the timeline, and here's the alternate timeline, and here's that timeline. I kind of laughed seeing him do that once again. So when Barry goes up against Rival again, he finally meets Alchemy, Dr. Alchemy, and I don't know who this guy is. He's wearing a mask. When he talks, honestly, did anybody else get this feeling or thought that he sounded like Jigsaw from Saw, Tobin Bell? Like when he was talking, I'm like, did they get Tobin Bell? It wouldn't be the craziest thing, right? Last season, they got Tony Todd to voice Zoom. So why not? Maybe I should look that up. That would be cool. But either way, it did sound like him. You see that Flash has as lame of a villain as I do think Rival is, just by the way he looks, and just a little lame, especially in comparison to the other speedsters, I still thought the fight was cool. I can forgive, or I can just go along with any time we get to see Barry go up against a speedster, and they're flying around and they're doing their stuff, and even when they're fighting each other, and you see just how faster the punches are compared to anyone else, and even the moments where Rival was trying to punch Barry and he was slowing down, moving out of the way, it was very cool. I liked all those effects. He was getting a little outnumbered and outmatched by Rival and Alchemy, and then Cisco shows up. Cisco's been working on this equipment to, I guess, make himself a vigilante superhero as well. Maybe he'll become Vibe, like the good version of Vibe. It was still cool to see him do that effects, whatever he was doing. It was working, so it was kind of cool. And Cisco says, stay away from my friend. So Cisco has, I guess, forgiven him for not going back and saving his brother. Everything seems to be back to normal, or going back to normal. Iris has forgiven Joe. Cisco is trying to forgive Barry. And look, I saw some people comment on my video from last week, and even just people on Facebook in general talking about this, and they're not happy. They're not happy on how this show has handled the Flashpoint story. And I get it. Look, Flashpoint, just in general from the comics or as a story, is probably one of the best comic book stories ever made. Definitely the Flash's best and biggest and most important comic book story ever. So just the idea of the show tackling this, I get it. The anticipation is high. It probably should have been at least half of a season, if not a full season long. Maybe the ramifications should have been bigger, should have been more intense, more hard for Barry to have to overcome. But instead, it's been 2 episodes, and it seems like everything's okay. Everything's back to normal. Everything's forgiven. So I will admit, this should have been bigger. I admit it. It should have been bigger. It should have bled over to Arrow, bled over to Legends, these other shows, Supergirl. The effects should have been bigger. It should have been damn near the end of the world. I admit that. But I also understand how hard it would be to do it. So you're in a tough spot. Either you don't do the story at all, or you at least try to take the story and maybe do your own version of it. I still find it odd that it's only been 2 episodes and we've already sort of forgiven everything. We've already sort of just brushed everything under the rug. In fact, Barry gets to kiss Iris, which, on that note, I am glad that it's not like, oh, in this timeline, Iris doesn't like him, and we have to chase it for another season. I'm glad that we're not chasing anymore, and that they did have their kiss, although it seemed like this is like the 5th or 6th time we've seen them kiss for the first time, but they got their moment. It was a nice moment, and I want to see these two as a couple for the first time ever. It's been a long build-up, so I want to see what happens there. The only thing that has been sort of a big impact, it seems like, because at first it looked like Caitlyn was the only one who was normal. But then you see that she has some of the Frost powers. She might actually become Killer Frost. Will she become evil? Or will she become good and stay with them and just have these powers? Who knows? I'm leaning more towards the evil side because, let's be honest, they're not really doing anything with her anyways. She just sort of sits there and looks up on the computer with stuff. So, look, do I understand people who are not liking how the show is handling Flashpoint? Yes, I get it. Me, it's just, I can't hate on the show. I have to wait and see what they're going to do. Like, why they haven't gone full-fledged with it, what else they have planned for the rest of the season. I've loved this show too much to just give up on it now or just to start trashing it now. It's still good. This episode was still good. Maybe things could have been better. Maybe, but I'm still with it. I'm still having fun. I'm still enjoying it, and I'm still optimistic. I'm still going to wait and see what we have in store for the next season. So guys, let me know in the comments below, what did you think of episode 2 Paradox? Are you hating on this? Are you shitting on this? Do you think all of this sucks? Or do you agree with me in saying, hey, look, it's good. It could be worse. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.